college students, Mark, Sarah, Jess, Brandon, Leah, and Kevin, had planned the perfect weekend escape from their demanding academic schedules. The idea of a camping trip deep in the remote Pine Ridge Forest seemed like a welcome break. Surrounded by nothing but nature, the students packed up their gear, hitched a trailer to Brandon's old truck, and drove for hours until civilization was just a distant memory. The air was crisp as they reached their campsite nestled in the middle of towering pine trees. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. But the group was undeterred. They were excited about the adventure and spent the evening setting up tents, laughing and telling stories around the fire. As night fell, the sounds of the forest came alive. Rustling leaves, chirping crickets, and occasional hoot of an owl. They roasted marshmallows and traded tales of old urban legends, daring each other to share the scariest one. But nothing they shared could have prepared them for what was about to unfold. It started with the wind, a strange low whistle that seemed to circle their camp, growing louder and more menacing. The fire flickered, and Leah was the first to notice something was off. "Does anyone hear that?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the noise. The others paused, listening closely. The wind had a strange quality to it, almost like voices carried through the trees whispering. "Probably just the wind through the branches," Kevin shrugged, trying to stay calm though even he felt uneasy. The group dismissed it, thinking it was their nerves playing tricks on them, but the strange occurrences only escalated. That night, as they crawled into their tents, Mark was the first to experience. He woke up in the dead of night, his tent unzipped just an inch. Groggy, he sat up, thinking it must have been one of the others playing a prank. But when he opened the flap wider, the forest outside was still. Too still. The wind had stopped and the night was unnaturally quiet. But there, standing at the edge of the trees, he saw something. A shadow, tall and unnervingly still, barely visible in the dim moonlight. It didn't move, yet Mark could feel his eyes on him. His breath caught in his throat, but when he blinked, the figure was gone. Convincing himself it was a trick of his mind, he zipped the tent back up and tried to sleep, but the uneasily. Next morning's Mark's stories was met with laughter. "Dude, you were probably dreaming," Brandon teased. "Maybe the s'mores mess with your head. Maybe they mess with your fucking head." But as they set out to explore the forest, strange things began to happen. Leah, wandering a little ahead of the group, froze mid-step. There were voices, low murmuring voices, just out of the reach. She turned around to call the others, but found herself alone. The trees around her seemed to close in, twisting into unfamiliar shapes. Panic set in and she ran back to the campsite, only to find the others just a few feet behind, complete unaware that she'd been missing. Jess, the most skeptical of the group, tried to lighten the mood. "We're just freaking ourselves out. It's a forest. There's bound to be some weird noises." But as the day wore on, each of them had their own unnerving encounter. Sarah felt someone or something tugging at her jacket when no one was around. Kevin saw fleeting shadows darting between the trees. Brandon's phone, fully charged that morning, mysteriously died after capturing a photo of what looked like a figure lurking in the background. That evening, they gathered around the fire again, but the careful atmosphere was gone. Tension hung in the air. They all felt it now, the weight of unseen eyes watching from the darkness. "I say we leave tomorrow," Mark suggested, his voice shaking slightly. The others nodded in agreement. The forest didn't feel right anymore, but as night fell once again, leaving wasn't an option. The road was too far to navigate in the dark, and they've already lost their sense of direction once. As they sat in the flickering light of the fire, a sound shattered the silence. A loud crack like a tree branch breaking. All at once the wind returned, howling through the campsite, sending sparks from the fire swirling into the air. The shadows in the trees seemed to shift, drawing close. Suddenly, Jess screamed. She pointed across the fire, her face pale. "There! Right there! Do you see that?" The others turned, but it was too late. Figures, shadowly featureless, were slowly emerging from the forest. Their outline were vague, but their presence was there, radiating a cold, paralyzing dread. Mark grabbed a flashlight and shone it toward them, but the beam cut through nothing. There was no one there, yet they could all feel it now, the weight of their gazes pressing down on them. The shadows surrounded the camp, closing in from all sides. "Get in the truck! Get in the fucking truck!" Brandon yelled, his voice crackling with fear. They scrambled to their feet, abandoning their gear and rushing for the truck. Kevin fumbled with the keys, his hands trembling as the whispers grew louder. Finally, the engine roared to life and they tore out of the campsite, driving blindly into the night. As they sped down a narrow dirt road, the hunting presence seemed to fade, but none of them spoke. The oppressive silence in the truck was louder than any words they could say. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, the sun was beginning to rise. Safe at last, they looked back one last time at the towering pines, now bathed in a soft morning light. The forest looked peaceful as nothing had ever happened, but they knew better. None of them ever spoke of that night. They returned to their busy college lives, but the memory of Pine Ridge Forest stayed with them, hunting their dreams. Something was out there watching from the shadows, waiting for the next group to wander too deep in the woods. And that night hunt them, and it hunt them for the rest of their days.